Where are we at in society today? Come after me! I'm a man! I'm 40!
Go ahead. Make my day.
Every single week, I put my freaking heart and soul into this. I don't go out there and laugh. It's not funny. It's not fun. Nothing's funny to me. I don't want to go out there and get embarrassed on Monday Night Football in front of everybody.
I think this is the beginning of a beautiful friendship.
So ain't nothing changed from yesterday. Still the same person I was yesterday. And I got the same thing for you that I had yesterday. You know why I'm here.
You play to win the game. You don't play to just play it. That's the great thing about sports. You play to win. And I don't care if you don't have any wins. You go play to win. When you start telling me it doesn't matter, then retire. Get out. Because it matters.
Not a ton of action from last night, that's for certain, but the win for Michigan State was a good one. Welcome, everybody, on this Thursday morning. X's and BrO's, Monday through Friday from 6 until 9 throughout the great state of Michigan. I'm Matt Shepard. Tomorrow morning, we will be doing this show live from Ferris Coffee in Grand Rapids. Doing so with our good friend, Rob Rubik. We will be talking Lions all morning long with you. And when they open the doors for you folks at 7 o'clock, and that's what time they turn that key, well, come on in with your Lions gear proudly. The Honolulu blue and silver, and get 10% off everything from that family-owned business that's been around for over 100 years now and in 50 states throughout our great country. 90-85 was the final for MSU last night. And the final score would indicate that it's probably a little bit closer than you expected, closer than I expected. Some big threes made by Penn State, and overall they hit 10. That's what 3-point shots do. They keep you in the game. When one team is 10 for 24, which was Penn State last night, which is pretty damn good. You shoot 42% as a team from 3-point land, you're all over that, right? I mean, a coach is fired up. Michigan State, 6 for 23. So took almost as many triples as Penn State, but made 4 fewer. There's 12 points. Obviously, you can do the math. Michigan State, the best free throw shooting team in the country. They knocked down those. 47% from the floor overall. Damn good. 24 assists on 32 makes. Absolutely really good. And another plus on the rebounding side. That's a good win for them. And it is stylistically, it may not be, well, I wanted this and I wanted more than a 5-point win. I like the way they played. I don't know if they closed out as hard as they should have, like Tom Izzo would want. You'll see camera shots on Big Ten Network last night of Tom Izzo, and he's not happy. He's not happy about the idiosyncrasies of what it takes, he thinks, in his system to win. So I don't know if guys are supposed to climb over or under certain screens against certain players, because that's a scouting report thing. I've been in those scouting reports with coaches in the past. It's fascinating because of the detail that goes into it. Every assistant coach you have is responsible for certain teams and the scout of those certain teams. And they scout every single player, every single sideline out of bound and baseline out of bound. And then they feed it to players, and players have to absorb it, understand it, and then execute it. Like, you and I could understand it. There's no problem sitting back in what appears to be like a film room theater for a team and saying, oh, okay, so against, let's just bring up a player, against, I don't know, let's see, Akins from Michigan State. If you're Penn State, you're like, okay, listen, need to close out on him, make him beat you with a dribble drive, or you're going to back off. And against screens, you're going to go over the top because you don't want him to turn the corner quite as hard. That's easy for me to sit there and go, oh, I get it. Let me write that down and then project that during the broadcast. But doing it while you're playing the thinking and playing at the same time, I've always felt it has to be really challenging. It's one thing if you're playing the same team over and over and over again. It's another thing if you're playing the same team that has a similar concept and similar style and similar talent as the team you just played. But if you have to change that completely from one team to the next, it's got to be super challenging. So I don't know all those little details that Tom Izzo may have with his specific personnel. And from a team aspect, I'm not exactly sure of what he was expecting against a Penn State team that does certain things certain well. But I thought Michigan State overall played pretty damn good. You don't like that your opposition is shooting 53%. I can tell you that. So he was not happy about that at all. But overall, you extend that winning streak to 10. Teams have a tendency to get a little complacent. I think it's almost a mindset that is common if they're winning constantly and consistently. But Michigan State didn't have that last night. You get a Frankie Fiddler off the bench with a career high 18, at least as a Spartan, 18, 7 rebounds, made that three that showed great emotion. Spartans are 15-2, man. They're 6-0 in conference play. They're 9-0 at home. They've won 10 consecutive games. There's room for improvement, no doubt. But you'll take it while you're 15-2 rather than stubbing your toe. So good for them. Another strong win. Love the way that they're playing. As we talked with Matt Steginger yesterday, defense, rebounding, toughness. The thing that might concern me slightly was the number of second chance opportunities for Penn State. Didn't always cash in. And if you look at it, it's 18 offensive rebounds, and you're like, oh my gosh, that's pretty. Michigan State had 15 offensive rebounds. So the 8 offensive rebounds, there's a couple where you were thinking, come on, I mean, that should be white ball right there. And it wasn't. But overall, I'm on board, and I think you are too. So a nice win for Michigan State, and they're off for a little bit. Meanwhile, tonight, Pistons welcome the Pacers to town. Detroit has won 10 of 12, and Indiana lost in Cleveland Tuesday night, or to Cleveland. They lost. It's actually a home game. Lost to Cleveland Tuesday night, snapping their 6-game roll. Michigan's back on the docket tonight. Wolverines trying to keep pace with MSU atop the Big Ten standings. Here's our poll question for the day. Do you think the Big Ten basketball conference is underrated? Simple yes or no. Now, the reason we bring this up is because we had this conversation with Matt Steginger yesterday. And he was looking at, I mean, we get our poll questions from things that you folks text in or say to us on the air. It's great fodder, right? It's fantastic conversation. And this is what I garnered from the conversation with Matt Steginger yesterday. He turns on some of the 4-letter networks or the 3-letter networks, and what does he see? He sees them talking college basketball, which is the hook. But then the focus is Auburn, and it's Alabama, and it's Florida, and it's Tennessee, who dropped from number 1, and it's Kentucky. Okay? Perhaps there's sprinkled in there a little Iowa State, who's number 2 in the country and beat the hell out of Kansas last night at Iowa State. Where's the Big Ten? There's not much Big Ten conversation whatsoever. Michigan State 12, Oregon 13, Michigan 20, Purdue 17, Illinois is right there at 19, Wisconsin at 24. I'm not saying you do a full segment on the Badgers. I'm just asking you aloud, where is the conversation about the Big Ten? Big Ten football had a hard time kind of breaking that seal with these networks too, and finally have received more and more love, and for good reason. Michigan wins the national championship last year. Ohio State, for all intents and purposes, I think, is going to win it this year. So they forced their way into that conversation. Until the Big Ten wins a national championship, it's going to be hard to get them into that conversation. It shouldn't during the regular season because of how well they're playing collectively. You can vote as often as you want at XB Mornings. We'll give you the results in the 8 o'clock hour tomorrow, live from Ferris Coffee. When we come back, something you got to love about a Lions assistant coach. That's next on X's and Bros.
Huge here for my good friend Josh Garvey. Now,
Back with you on X's and Bros. A reminder, tomorrow we will be at Ferris Coffee starting at 6 o'clock. Doors open for you at 7. We'll be there from 6 until 9 with Rob Rubik talking Lions all morning long with you. Show up in your Lions gear and you get 10% off your purchase. This hour of X's and Bros proudly sponsored by our friends at Meijer. And Meijer, by the way, does carry Ferris Coffee. All the Meijer locations throughout the country, not just throughout the great state of Michigan. All right, we've talked before about the pursuit of Lions coordinators, and for good reason. They're the two hottest commodities, and they should be. Ben Johnson's well accomplished. He's creative. He's got his proverbial crap together, and he is excellent at what he does. Aaron Glenn has turned more than one head, and he's changed people's opinions. As I've said before, it's really hard to change people's opinions. Once you've made up your mind about somebody or something or some team, it's difficult to say, yeah, okay, you've changed my mind. We had a caller last week, I believe. Maybe it was this week. Excuse me, I've forgotten. But they actually called in and said, look, Aaron Glenn should be coach of the year. I wanted him gone, even at the beginning of this season. But seeing what he has done has changed my mind. I mean, it takes a big person to say something like that. And I give that person a ton of credit. Aaron Glenn, with a depleted defense, has still helped this team win 15 games, win the NFC North, grab the number 1 seed in the NFC, and still be one of the favorites to win the Super Bowl. He has interviewed for 5 openings: the Bears, the Jaguars, the Raiders, the Jets, and the Saints. It's not the Jaguars. I've heard people on broadcast say that. It drives me up the wall. It's not Jagwire. It's Jaguar. It's Jaguars. Okay, anyway. So he's turned down the interview request from the Patriots, and he said he didn't feel, his words, it just wasn't the best situation for me. And that's obvious. I mean, Robert Kraft goes out. He was going to take Mike Vrabel anyway. There has to be a point in time where some of these coaches, especially some of the black coaches, feel like, you know what, I'm just getting interviewed for a certain quota, and I'm not going to go through that. Aaron Glenn said this when asked about the takeaway from what he's learning during the interview process. It's one of my favorite quotes. He says this: the one thing that I get out of all these interviews is I'm going to be myself. And either you like it or you don't. If you don't, it's all good. He keeps telling general managers, owners, presidents, who's ever sitting around that conference table, they've got a whiteboard or they've got some type of video up, and they're asking you to go through with a clicker and a pointer or drawing up your concepts, all the different things. You know, this is not an interview where you're wearing a suit and a tie and you sit down and you just talk. They want to know players, your assessment of their players, the assessment of what kind of player you're going to bring in. And it's not just, I want, after next year, TJ Watt's going to be a free agent. I would go get a guy like TJ Watt. No, they want to know, how do you fit? How does this player fit your system? Why is he good for your culture, your locker room, your scheme, and helping us win? They want to know all these different things. They're going to ask you about the draft a little bit. And there's a ton of different ways. That's why these things last hours. It's not a half-hour Zoom call. Hey, thanks. We'll get back to you. We've got a few other candidates. This takes a long time. He says, if you don't like it, it's all good. I keep telling all these people, I have a great job here in Detroit. And if you like it, if it's an opportunity that I think is best for me and my family, then we'll take a look at it. But had a really good time over the bye week looking at these opportunities. But now we're locked in, ready to go and play this game against Washington. I think there are some people who are out there and are skeptics. They feel like, well, you have taken all week flying from Chicago to Jacksonville to Las Vegas to all these different places, and your mind isn't where it should be, when that couldn't be further from the truth. It is a constant coaching really never stops. There are certain coaches who are more film hogs than others, but what drives them is the ability to make teams and specific players better. How do you do that? Film watching, looking at various techniques, looking at tendencies, the little minute details that are so very important in order to be successful as a coach. And I thought what he said there about, look, I'm going to be me. I'm not changing for you. If you don't like it, it's okay. I'm not going to be offended, but I'm not going to change. If at least the person, right? You can always change concepts. You can always change the way you may go about doing things. You have to adjust. If you don't think some of the best coaches in any sport that we've ever seen haven't adjusted, you're wrong. I've told you the story about Tom Landry on a pretty regular basis on how he kind of opened up that allowed players to recognize, yeah, there was a change there. We told you the story earlier this week about why people in Cleveland should be somewhat concerned, because coaches there changed the concept or what they believed would be best for their offense for Deshaun Watson. It didn't work. Should you change back? Absolutely. But Kevin Stefanski remains who he is. Coaches remain who they are. I've had these debates with people in the past where they have said things like, well, that coach brings on his good buddy. Bill Belichick's a good example. He keeps bringing guys like Josh McDaniels back, or he kept Charlie Weiss because he's his good friend, or he brings back Matt Patricia even though he failed. Yeah, you know why? Because those coaches trust them, and they've had success with them. You've gotten to a certain point in your career, and there may be somebody who's aided you along or given you some great advice. And now you have an opening. That person might be looking to move on. Do you at least talk to them? Absolutely you do. Because you trust them. You understand what they are like and what your company may need. It's no different in a coaching situation. Aaron Glenn works his ass off looking at film and making sure he's got guys that he can trust. And Dan Campbell trusts him. He knows he's got it good. He's basically telling everybody who will listen, hey, man, I'm in a pretty good spot. In order for you to want me to be your next head coach, your spot has got to be to my liking and a fit for my family as well. I'm not just going to uproot and leave a really good team led by a really good owner and a really good general manager with a great vision, who knows exactly who I am, likes who I am, understands what I am, and allows me to accentuate the things in my defense that we feel are most important. In other words, they let him do his job. It's a great spot for him to be in. Our phone number on the Meijer hotline, 866-838-4843. Meijer sponsors this hour of X's and Bros. When we come back, it might surprise you just a little bit on how certain players are now viewed after rough performances. We'll get to that when we return on X's and Bros after this.
The Meijer 7 for 7
It is closing in just a couple of days before the Lions host the Washington Commanders, a team that is coming off its first postseason win since 2006. And some would argue that the Lions are the most exciting team in the NFL. I would argue that. I would say absolutely they are. Anybody in Kansas City might argue for their Chiefs. I say it not with my heart. I say it with my head. There's too many times where we get in these debates and it's but it's my favorite team, so I have to support it. No, if you can't look objectively at it, I don't want to talk to you. If it's all about the heart and how much you love a player or how much you love a team, then just go sit in the fan section and talk to all the fans and gush over one another about it. If you can't look at this objectively, it doesn't warrant a conversation. Philadelphia is really entertaining. Minnesota was. When they're in sync, when they're ready, they're entertaining. What makes Detroit so entertaining, in my mind, is not just the weapons, but how Ben Johnson uses those weapons. I think a lot of people will be like, oh, yeah, but you may say Penei Sewell catch a pass. You may see Taylor Decker catch a pass, or Dan Skipper will come in and catch a touchdown pass. It's happened once for Dan Skipper, and I think it's happened once for Penei Sewell. They tried it a couple of times for Taylor Decker. It's fun. Don't get me wrong, but it's not something that I'm seeing on a regular basis. What I see on a regular basis from their offense is the beauty of their ability to incorporate all the skill sets of their talented players. So I enjoy watching the Lions because I think they're uber talented and that Ben Johnson gets the most out of their talent. There are others, and I would warrant some type of discussion with Philadelphia. I think Philadelphia does a really nice job, but I don't think Jalen Hurts is good of a quarterback as Jared Goff in this system. I know he runs better. I know there are certain things that you really like about him, and he's taken his team to a Super Bowl. So is Jared Goff, by the way, just not this team. But I like the way Jared Goff plays in this system. Is there anybody else? Yeah, the Rams. The Rams are really fun to watch offensively. Now, Kansas City can be, but they've been besieged with a ton of injuries. And the thing that makes Buffalo so energizing and so much fun, I believe, is strictly the trigger. I don't think there's anybody else that makes me go, okay, hold on now. Look out what's going to happen here. I think Detroit keeps you on the edge of your seat on a pretty regular basis. That said, we know that this is going to be the hottest ticket. Somebody told me yesterday it's the highest ticket for any playoff game in NFL history. Not the Super Bowl, but a playoff game for anything in playoff history. I don't know that. That's just what somebody had told me.
I have not been, which is one source, but yeah, I saw that as well, Shep. The average price is like $991.
Yeah, the average price, according to StubHub, is $993.
It's a lot.
Okay. The next is the Rams and Eagles at $511. Almost twice as much for Lions and Commanders as it is for Eagles and Rams. When you look at the AFC and you see Houston and Kansas City, the average there, again, $511. The Ravens and Bills, now some of this may have to do with the weather in Buffalo because it's supposed to be super frigid, but the average ticket cost there is $286. On Game Time, taxes and fees, there is a similar demand. The top ticket, according to Game Time, for the Lions and Commanders is $1,690.
My Lord.
I know someone yesterday who bought a ticket for $800 to go watch, just by himself, to go watch the Lions and the Commanders play. My immediate question to that person was, well, I'm glad you got that kind of money, because I don't. But I'm wondering why the game against the Commanders and not just hold out expecting and hoping that they get to the NFC Championship game and go watch history made. This is equivalent to what we saw last year against Tampa, is it not? Right. So why would we, or against the Rams, excuse me. So why is it we feel like the NFC Championship game wouldn't be more worthy of our hard-earned dollar?
I don't know if it's so much that, but I love the short-sightedness of fans. Like, let's get through this weekend, and then maybe I'll splurge on another grand and a half.
I mean, but this is, like I said, this is something that you could have experienced last year. What you may see in 2 weeks against Philly or the Rams, and it wouldn't surprise me if the Rams were there, not the way they played. I mean, they're going to have to play lights-out defense, no question. But it wouldn't surprise me if we saw either one of those teams. When we expect Detroit to get there, and I do, I just asked this person who doesn't spend a lot of money on games and has only been to one game this year, but they want to go to this one. Why not just wait for history? It's never happened where Detroit has hosted the NFC Championship game in the Super Bowl era. What you're going to go to this week, I'm not discouraging people from going. Those who have paid for their season tickets, those who are choosing to go, that's awesome. I'm so happy for you. I root it on. I hope you get also that. I hope you're the first one in line to go and be able to see that team in the NFC Championship game, because you're the one who has been there every single Sunday. You're the person who has been the most loyal and put the most sweat equity into this team. Not that you don't get new people. Sure you do. And that's kind of the beauty of football. The beauty of football is it is appealing to a lot of different people. Whereas if you're going down to Little Caesars Arena and you're going to watch the Red Wings, you're going to see a lot of people you see there on a regular basis. You got to be a hockey-loving person to go there 41 times a year. With football, because you're only getting 8, sometimes 9 home games, you're making the sacrifices during the regular season to make sure you are there. It's coming from all over the place. Trent goes from Grand Rapids, for crying out loud, to go see this team. It's a hell of a sacrifice. And you do that, but you're only going once a week or one time a week. With this situation, I really hope a lot of the people who have been that type of been able to have that type of sacrifice, get that opportunity to go see history. They're the ones who deserve it, not me. Those are the people who now price-wise tough, but I hope those people get that same chance. It's kind of like if you go to church and you're going every single Sunday, and then Easter and Christmas comes along, and you walk into you walk into church and you're looking around and you're saying, where the hell were you in October on Sunday? How come I didn't see you in July on Sunday? Oh, it's the Creasters. Christmas and Easter is when you go, and you're taking all that aisle and all those seats that where we usually sit. But I digress. How much would you pay? How much are you willing to pay to go see the Lions and the Commanders this week? We just told you that the average price on StubHub, this is on StubHub now, the average price is $993. Higher or lower than that? Personally, I can't justify it. I'll find a way to justify a lot of things. I'll go find a way to justify a suit for that kind of money for me. I would go justify a getaway golf trip with my buddies for that kind of money. Going to watch one football game. I'm not telling people not to go. I am not saying that you're wrong and I'm right. I'm not questioning your responsibility. I'm not questioning your ability to manage money. None of that. I'm just, for me, I couldn't justify it. I find, and especially in football, more so than any other sport, like I'm watching Michigan State last night. I'm thinking, love that atmosphere. My son and I are talking, and he's like, what's that atmosphere like at Breslin Center? I said, it's awesome. It really is. It's a phenomenal place to watch a basketball game, especially if you're a Michigan State. And I said to my wife, I said, I really hope my daughter Rachel is getting the opportunity to go to some of these games as a student there at MSU, because it's electric. It's a ton of fun. I can't say that I want to sit at the very top of the Breslin Center, but when you're in that lower bowl, it's a rare feeling that you get
when you're in the
Big
zone.
Ten. Even if you're not in the end zone. I mean, I know that's for students. I'm talking about as
being
a
down
fan,
there.
You're not getting in there, right?
Sure.
That's cool too. It's special. Opening up the paper, the chants, all that other stuff. Really cool. I'm talking about as a regular fan. You're coming in off the street, or you're coming in, and when you're not a student, it's still an electric place. You feel it. Okay, there are certain buildings where you go into, and I'm not saying Breslin Center is like Rupp Arena. I'm not suggesting that it's like Fog Allen. It's not. It's a different vibe. One vibe is not necessarily better than the other. It's just a different vibe, but there's an electricity that you feel when you go there. Ford Field gives you that same electricity.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of people who feel like when they go to that place, they make a difference. Good for you. You do. But for me, I would, especially with football, love watching these games at home. I can't take, and I've said this before, I can't take the commercial breaks. It's ridiculous, right? I mean, I suppose there's a part of you that sits down next to your buddy and you're like, this gives us a chance to talk a little bit. But if I got to stand for an entire event and I got to wait for all these commercial breaks, and I see the red hat out there knowing that I've got 3 minutes now, 3 minutes before I see any type of action again, and see it over and over and over again. Do yourself a favor one time. Again, I'm not telling you not to go. Take a stopwatch. Click it as soon as the ball is put in play. Stop it when it's not, and tell me what you come up with. I love football. I could watch it every weekend. Trent and I talked about this yesterday. I could watch it every single weekend, college or pro. At one of my favorite times of the year, I said this earlier this season, there was a stretch of 55 consecutive days of football, college or NFL. Didn't get any better. Every day you're sitting there going, this is going to be awesome. What? It's a Mid-American Conference game. It's action during the week. I don't care. I can't wait to watch it. I get a chance to watch football. It's fantastic. I'd like to watch it all season long. It's not fair. It's selfish. I understand it, and I'm willing to admit it, but I want to watch it. Going to a game and sitting through all those, instead of getting the opportunity to get up, open your refrigerator, open up your laptop, get some work done at the same time, all that stuff, it's just difficult for me. But how much would you pay to go see your favorite team in this type of situation? This is different than a regular season game, obviously. That's why you have so many people coming out of the woodwork. They can't wait to go because they have been waiting for this all week long or all season long. And this is where they've chosen to save all their money and spend it all in this one spot. Go enjoy the tailgates, get into Eastern Market, have as much fun as you possibly can. Deck yourself out in Honolulu blue and silver, much like you will tomorrow when you come visit us at Ferris Coffee. I'm all for that. Good for you. It's going to be awesome. I hope you have the experience of a lifetime. I hope a lot of dads out there take their sons, because who knows if you ever get this opportunity again, which, by the way, opens up something else. I was talking with a friend yesterday, and I want to get your opinion on this through the Meyer hotline. When he told me a certain negative line about the Lions. So we'll get into that when we come back. But I hope you get that opportunity. I couldn't do it, but I'm wondering how much you would pay. The Meyer hotline is open for you, 866-838-4843, or you can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. Everybody's got a budget. I think everybody I know has a budget.
That's what it comes
unless
down
you're
to,
friends,
right?
Well, unless you're friends with Elon Musk, there is no budget. Like I would, I have no idea what that would be like.
Well, and if your answer is I wouldn't pay $900, like that doesn't.
I want to buy it. I like that. I want to buy it. I buy whatever the hell you want. I can't do that. I'm sure most people can't do that either. That's why they've made the sacrifice all season long. Shep, I haven't gone to any games this year. I've made the sacrifice. I've saved up rather than spending $250 every single week to go see them play. I've saved that money strictly for this. Wise. Good for you. Go enjoy. You deserve it. That's awesome. Just because those people have made sacrifices to get to those games every week doesn't mean you haven't made sacrifices for not going. This was a calculated move on your part. Fair enough. Good stuff. I can't do that. Some people feel like this is it. But why this game and not the NFC Championship game? Unless you feel like either A, you've saved up for both, or B, you just don't want to take the chance.
Or maybe you think the NFC Championship game is going to be even astronomically more ridiculously priced.
That's what the comments. When I said somebody made that purchase yesterday for $800, and I said, why not wait one more week for the first ever Lions hosting of an NFC Championship game? They said, because those numbers will be even more expensive.
Might be $1,400.
And I won't be able to afford that. Okay. I accept it. I'm not saying it's wrong. I accept it. I wanted to know why. Phone number on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. When we come back, I'd like, if you've got a number in your head that is too much or one that you may exceed, give us a call, or you can send us a text. But when we come back, yesterday, I'm in the barber's chair, and the guy says to me, I've been burned too often by the Lions, so I'm a little nervous. That caught me by surprise a little bit. Huge Lions fan. This guy's a huge Lions fan. But I thought, what is it about this team this year that would make you say that? We'll have that discussion on the other side on X's and Bros on a Thursday morning.
Huge here for my good friend Josh Garvey.
Second hour of the program. Welcome back, X's and Bros. Yesterday, and this hour of our program is sponsored by Ferris Coffee. Ferris Coffee is where we will be tomorrow, starting at 6. The doors open at 7 o'clock. Rob Rubik and I will be there to talk Lions football with you all morning long. 8:35 today, we will visit with Lions play-by-play voice Dan Miller. He will join us, and we will talk about this team and the matchup that is the Washington Commanders coming up. We can talk about some other things too. That's what I like about having a lot of these guests on, is you don't have to solely focus on the Detroit Lions. I know you want to hear a lot about the Lions, but we talk a lot about them already. We'll ask him a little bit about that, and we'll ask him how they handle Jaden Daniels and how they have to get pressure, how they're going to go about that. Remember this, Detroit had just 37 sacks during the regular season, 9th fewest in the NFL. Jaden Daniels really good against the blitz. Detroit really good. I wonder when you read up on a lot of these matchups and you kind of look at all the statistics, I start to ask myself a few questions. And one is, do I look solely at what this team did during the regular season? And I just mentioned the number. Or do I look at what this team has done recently? And that's the thing that you kind of have to weigh. Like, if you're looking at the Baltimore-Buffalo matchup, do you look at the first game in which Baltimore beat the snot out of them? I'm just opened up a proverbial can on them, 35-10. Or do you look at, since that was way back in week 4, do you look at the 5-game winning streak that Baltimore has, where they've outscored the opposition 163-57, and that Lamar Jackson during that stretch has accounted for 15 touchdowns and only 1 pick? I don't care about style points. I care about wins. I care about how they go about winning. So, for example, Jackson, I think, only threw for 175 yards against the Steelers, but he threw for 2 touchdowns. Derrick Henry rushed for a couple of touchdowns. Matthew Stafford didn't have big numbers yards-wise in the Rams win, but against the Vikings, but he did throw for a couple of touchdowns. There are so many ways you can look at it. So I'm in the barber's chair yesterday, and I'm talking to this guy who's a really good guy and a huge Lions fan. He's a season ticket holder. His kids actually got him tickets to New Orleans, not tickets to the Super Bowl, but plane tickets to go there because he is such a Lions freak. They said, Dad, we want you to go and enjoy the Lions' first ever Super Bowl. And he said, it is. And he said, I'm not sure about this because I've just been burned so often. And to a certain extent, I get it. You have to live through that stuff. You have to understand that there are people a little bit older in age who have actually had their hearts broken when they thought things were going to go really well for the Lions. They thought, okay, this is the year, 1991, for example. This is the year that our team is better than your team. And then Washington welcomes them to RFK and slaps them across the face in a blowout win to reach the Super Bowl and eventually win the Super Bowl. You're left heartbroken. And then you think, since the national mantra was this team and the Dallas Cowboys are the team of the 1990s. That's what they said. They said that about Herman Moore and Brett Perriman and Johnny Morton and David Sloan and Barry Sanders and Chris Spielman. They thought that team was going to be the team to beat. Everybody was going to look at that team and say, I want to be like them, and it never came to fruition. So I understand. I've lived through it, the heartbreak, the expectation, the lack of ability to reach that expectation. And really, you look back and you say, shame on me. Shame on me for believing in a guy like Wayne Fontes, who just smoked a cigar and you never really felt on the sideline he knew what the hell he was doing. He just had unbelievable talent. I oftentimes would sit there and think to myself, you know what? Give me a really good coach during that stretch. Give me Joe Gibbs. Might be a little more conservative, but give me Joe Gibbs on the sidelines with his staff, most importantly, and tell me that team wouldn't be more successful. And then you move forward and you're like, okay, we get a guy like Steve Mariucci, who has gotten the San Francisco 49ers to the NFC Championship game. He has accomplished more in his career than Wayne Fontes has. I would take Steve Mariucci. He gets in that role and you're like, wow, what a disappointment, because it's Camp Mariucci, that he had already licked the stamp on his career and it was done. You hoped, hey, Bobby Ross, here's a disciplinarian. Here's a guy who actually led an underdog team, the San Diego Chargers, by Stan Humphries, for crying out loud, and led them to a Super Bowl. Do you really don't think he could do that with a really talented Lions team? Never materialized. So I understand the heartbreak. I understand the disappointment. What I can't figure out is what this team has done to you that would warrant the same types of feelings. And so that's what I said to him. And, we had a good, frank conversation. I said, what is it you're worried about? And he said, well, I'm a little concerned about the defense. I said, it's fair. I'm not suggesting it's not fair, but were you worried about them when they played Minnesota? Yeah, I absolutely was. Did they not show you something against Minnesota? And this is why I started this conversation is which numbers do you look at? Do you look at the total season, or do you look at what's recent? And how recent are you willing to go? Because prior to the Minnesota game, that same defense that he was worried about, and justifiably so, I think you were too, if you're honest with yourself, you are a little concerned if a team's allowing 32.5 points per game over a 4-game stretch, even though they're winning, although they did lose one of those games, it's okay to say, it's got me a little concerned. I'm a big Lions fan, but it's got me a little concerned. So I understood that aspect of it. Then I asked him this, how many points do you think Washington will have to score in order for them to beat Detroit? Like, we always think Detroit's going to have to outscore the opposition, as of late, especially because of the injuries on defense, because a lot of the names we don't know on defense, and because that defense has been susceptible. I think it's an accurate point, and it's an accurate concern. So I said to him, how many points do you think Washington is going to have to score in order for them to actually get the job done? And do you think they can do that? Even if that's what it takes. If that's what it takes to outscore the opposition, you're okay with that. You should be okay with it. Because if you're going to use that example of the defense that concerns you because of a recent trend, then you should at least understand and pat this team on the back and feel a little bit more comfortable about how much the offense has been able to dominate. And it has dominated. It's the number one scoring offense in the National Football League. It's a plus 222 in the scoring differential. And I know I bring that up quite a bit, but it's a really important statistic. That is 62 points more than second place Philadelphia. That is a dominating performance. Look at how many times this team has scored 30 points or more this year. It's 9 times. This team will score 30 and rush for well over 160 yards against Washington. Washington has the second worst rushing defense in the National Football League. If you don't think other teams go into a game against Washington and say, we're going to have to run the football, or we feel like we can run the football, and Washington is sitting there going, you know what, they're going to try to run the football. Guess what? It's every single flipping weekend. And yet Washington still allowed those types of yards and still had that type of ranking. So this is not going to come as a surprise. It's not coming as a surprise to you. It won't come as a surprise to Dan Quinn in Washington. They know Detroit's going to try and run the football. Guess what? Detroit will try and run the football, and they will run the football because they're better at running the football than Washington is at stopping the football.
And they've got David Montgomery back too, so you add that in the mix.
So when you have that, that keeps Jaden Daniels off the field. Quite honestly, I don't think they have to do that. I think the defense is going to be good enough to keep Jaden Daniels. Go ahead. Get him on. Is he going to get first downs? Absolutely. Are they going to score? For sure. But I don't think overall Detroit's defense is so inept that they won't be able to find a way to stop him. And I think they're going to be able to do that. And I still think they're going to be able to score 30 points. So I'm pretty comfortable with that. So I had this conversation with my barber, and I brought up the offensive standpoint. He brings up the fourth down situation. Again, he loves Dan Campbell, but that I said 22 for 33 on fourth downs during the regular season. They're the only team in the playoffs that ranked in the top 10 in attempts, fourth down attempts. But guess what? They cashed in. So did Washington, just so in case you were wondering. During the regular season, Washington 20 of 23 on fourth downs. And they went 3 for 5 against Tampa. What's your big concern? The phone number is 866-838-9222. 4843. That's the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. Or you can always text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. Lions play-by-play voice Dan Miller joins us 8:35 to talk about this and more right here on X's and Bros.
Let's hit the road. It's time to go RVing. Don't
Timeout. A game or two doesn't make. That moments are longer, okay? Moments in your world it happens once. Moments in my world is, let's do it 5, 6, 7 times, and then I'll be ready to say, you know what? Frankie did a good job. Really good job. Let's not ruin him. Let's just say he did a good job. He's going to get better. This confidence thing, there. Now we got confidence. You know what? There. Now we don't have confidence because we didn't guard anybody tonight. I was very proud and happy for Frankie. I was happy that the players were very happy for Frankie. More than scoring the ball, I thought his biggest key was he got 7 rebounds and some of those were putbacks, which means he played aggressively.
That's Tom Izzo following his team's win over Penn State last night at Breslin Center. They are now 46-10 all time against the Nittany Lions, 27-2 all time at home against Penn State. Welcome back. Meyer Hotline 866-838-4843. You knew you were going to get that, right? I mean, when you see the box score, you didn't even have to watch the game. I watched the game. I enjoyed it very much. I think Michigan State shows off its athleticism on a regular basis. How Carr missed that alley-oop, I don't know. And I thought, I even texted Trent during the broadcast. I like Robbie Hummel. I think he's trying to talk too much like Jay Billis, but I like him. Him saying that he would win the dunk contest in the NBA had me rolling on the floor.
It's a little.
A little.
I get it. You're trying to make the point that he's athletic. I get it.
Oh my God! There are ways you can say that a guy is athletic without going to the extreme and over the top. I mean, that was an asinine comment. It was an asinine comment. I get you want people to. I'm already engaged in the game. I'm watching it because I think it looks like it's a pretty good game. I'm rooting, obviously, for Michigan State a hell of a lot more than Penn State. I like to see good basketball. I like to see certain guys play well. I like to see the flow of the game, all that other stuff. You don't have to. You're not going to keep me by saying, stick around and watch this guy. This guy's going to be an unbelievable player because he can dunk. I don't need to know if he's going to be a better dunker than anybody in the NBA right now.
Vince Carter. Yeah, no, Shep, when you texted me that
right now, I'm talking about right now. I'm talking about right now, the NBA players. Who's the best dunker? I don't even know. Do you know that? I don't know. Let me ask you this. Is Carr a better dunker than LeBron James? No. Even now.
Not relatively, yeah.
And I don't even have to bring him up. But I just don't. I bring him up just because of his age, and he's still doing it at such a high level. I didn't understand the comment. I don't want to get caught up in that. I'm talking more about Michigan State basketball and how good they were. Good for them. 6-0 in the Big Ten for the first time when it won its first 9 conference games back in 2018-19. Let's get to the Meyer Hotline, 866-838-4843. Who's up on this Thursday morning?
We've got Zach in Grand Haven. He wants to talk about those Red Hot Spartans.
Hi, Zach. How you doing?
Morning, sir. How you doing? Doing all right. Well, I did call for Michigan State. Real quick on that, on the dunk comment. Honestly, I could care less who can dunk. I don't care. I want you to be a better basketball player all around. Right.
Amen.
I had a quick question. I get called earlier in the season. I don't remember if you remember my comment about is Michigan State a national championship contender in basketball. And I had thoughts on that, and to see what your thoughts were, if it's leaning more towards yes they are, or if we could tell, because you brought up having being a national championship contender, you have to have NBA players. And I see that Michigan State with Jay Nakin's the only player on the team averaging over 10 points a game. So you have a well dispersed team there. But also, I want to know in your mind, because you've been around sports a lot longer than I have, but what makes everybody makes this comment, and I listened to Joe Beeline on Huge Show about how Michigan and Michigan State, they're great basketball teams. What makes a great basketball team to you?
I think it starts with leadership. I know that's very much of a cliche, but I think it's really vital. I think it's really important that you have the right people in place. At the collegiate level, I do believe you have to have a solid backcourt. I love the way Fears plays. I love the way Akins plays. And I think you have to have buy-in. I think it's really important for players to buy into what the coaching staff is telling them. And that can be challenging, especially if you lose. Now, Michigan State has lost on a consistent basis. I remember your call, and I appreciate it. My response was probably, I don't know, because I don't think anybody knew. At the time you made that asked that question, it was early in the season. Do we have a better feel for MSU now on whether or not they are a championship contender? I think we do. And I think it's fair to look, I know we don't get caught up too much in rankings. If you're ranked 12th in the country at this stage of the year and you're 15-3, I think that's a pretty big body of work. 18 games is a pretty big body of work, don't you think? You're going to play 35 games or so, somewhere in that. I don't know exactly how many games you're going to play. You're basically at the midway point. Why would we think we need to see any more out of what this team? If this team stays healthy, that's always a big if in any prediction. And if this team continues to play with this type of style, now I know the defense wasn't great last night, but I like the way they played. I think Penn State made some really tough threes to keep them in the game. I think that's a double-digit win for MSU if Penn State doesn't pull some of those threes out of their shorts. So I would say yes. After that, I watched a little bit of the Iowa State-Kansas game. And Iowa State's really good. I mean, has Kansas, do they make you stop and say, oh my gosh, they would blow Michigan State out of the gym if they played today? No. Have you watched Michigan? Have you watched Illinois? Not huge on Purdue per se, but I think those teams, Oregon, I don't think the Big Ten, that's why we have it as our poll question. I think the Big Ten is underrated. How much other Big Ten action do you watch other than MSU?
Yeah, I actually watched the whole Purdue game prior to that, or after that, and after. And I've watched Michigan, I've watched Wisconsin play, I've watched Illinois play, I watched them completely dismantle Indiana 2 nights ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll tell you, the Big Ten is very tough, and I think Michigan State, yes, they are a contender. I still have my doubts about certain things, but like everybody does. But I think the earlier matchup this year with Michigan State, Kansas, I think Michigan State wins that ball game.
Yeah, I mean, and you and I both know that Kansas beat them earlier this year, I think by 8, but that was really early. That's why it depends on when you play a team, right? Everybody says time and place. Time, what they mean is not the time on the clock, time in the schedule. If those two teams clashed, even on a neutral floor today, I would favor MSU. I think they are a better buy-in team to what Tom Izzo is all about. This is what I love about coaches, though, especially a guy like Tom Izzo. Tom Izzo knew what he had with his team early on. He didn't publicly say it, but you could tell he was anxious about what this team was going to do during the regular season because he knew it was going to be good. But the guys in the backcourt, the way they push tempo, the way they play, Jeremy Fears at the helm, I think is really impressive. And that's what I like about him. There is no fear with him, and I think he pushes tempo. Look at them on the fast break on a pretty regular basis. They are winning that battle. So I'm really encouraged. I love the way they're playing. And I know Izzo's never going to be satisfied. No coach truly ever is. I really like Michigan State, and I like really the top 3 teams, because I like Illinois too. Top 3 teams in the Big Ten, the way they play. So this will be a fun conversation you and I can have throughout the rest of the regular season and into the postseason as well. We got to hit a break. When we come back, we will talk a little bit more Lions. Unless you want to keep it going here with Michigan State, I'm fine with that. And football in general. Sam Darnold has had a terrible last 2 weeks. How much do you think it hurt his cause if he goes into free agency? We'll discuss that and other players when we come back on X's and Bros.
Hey, Michigan, let's Five's a big part of us. He's a huge part of us, you know, and to me, he's a bell cow. He's a tone setter. You know, he's a catalyst. So there's a place for him. It's a place for him here. So it'll be a place for him in this game. So it's going to be good to get him back.
Dan Campbell about David Montgomery. It'll be interesting to see how much he plays and how effective he can be. I hope it's that 1-2 punch that we saw earlier this season. But either way, you feel really good about Detroit's running game, not just because Washington has one of the worst rushing defenses in football, but just because of Detroit's ability to do just that. If I ask you, what's the and by the way, you can call us on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. You can text the program Sports Radio to 21,000. This hour of X's and Bros brought to you by Ferris Coffee. If I asked you the reason Washington can win and the reason Detroit could lose, what would it be? Washington, when you ask people that, they'll tell you the reason they can win is because of Jaden Daniels.
Yep.
And they'll tell you, well, you know, here's the thing. Anytime you deal with mobile quarterbacks, there's that problem of trying to, you know, you can't necessarily, he's good enough to throw from the pocket, but he's really good outside the pocket as well.
Yeah, you can't sell out either way.
To possibly control him or somehow, some way isolate him in one way or the other. You can't do that. And he's a running quarterback. And I know, I told you, second most rushing yards by any quarterback. What Detroit, here's the beauty of what Detroit has done this year. They have faced plenty of mobile quarterbacks. I know everyone gravitates toward the Josh Allen, MVP candidate, hell of a player, had an unbelievable season. But what about Baker Mayfield? What about Kyler Murray? To a certain extent, Geno Smith. What about, Jordan Love is a mobile quarterback. Not that he's the equivalent to Jaden Daniels, but he gets outside the pocket. He runs the football. Anthony Richardson does the same thing. Caleb Williams does the same thing. The one hiccup the Lions have had against a mobile quarterback is against Buffalo and Josh Allen. And correct me if I'm wrong here, but Josh Allen has done that to a lot of different teams. During that game, Josh Allen threw for 362 and rushed for 68. He threw for 2 touchdowns and ran for 2 touchdowns. Yes, he was a problem. He's been a problem all season long to just about everybody he's played on his schedule outside of Baltimore. And that's the reason he's in the MVP conversation. But it's a fair point. I'm asking for the answer, and the answer is usually Jaden Daniels, and I'm not going to disagree with it. I think he's a phenomenal player. I loved him at LSU. I noticed him at Arizona State, but I really, obviously, at LSU, when you win the Heisman Trophy, no kidding, he's going to jump off the page at you. I said before the draft, you can go back, spin back, and listen to it. I said I think he's going to be the best quarterback of the group. I would take him over Caleb Williams. People are like, "Oh, are you kidding me? Caleb Williams this, Caleb." I liked Jaden Daniels, and I think he's going to have a hell of a career. I think Detroit's going to have an answer for him. So when you say, "All right, he's the reason they can win," I get it. What's the reason Detroit loses? People immediately say, "Well, their defense," and I don't say that. I think it's turnovers. Think about this. This is kind of an underrated statistic, and I know sometimes we get way too caught up in numbers in sports in general, especially baseball, but in football. But I'm going to say it anyway. Washington, when you look at their scoring, yeah, they score. It's good. It's not as good as the Lions, but nobody was as good as the Lions. They set a franchise record this year, and nobody in the league had a better scoring differential, and nobody had scored more points on a regular basis. Washington attempted 42 field goals this year. The only teams to attempt more, Dallas used Cooper Rush a lot. No offense. Love that he's a chip. Love that he's from the state of Michigan, but not exactly a top 15 quarterback. They used him a lot. They had a terrible season. They were forced to kick a lot of field goals. Is that fair? I hope so. Okay. Pittsburgh, What was the knock on Pittsburgh all season long?
Their offense was terrible.
Their offense was terrible. They settled for field goals. And San Francisco. And San Francisco attempted 43, just one more than Washington.
And had their worst season in 5 years.
Had their worst season in 5 years. I think it's important to bring that up. Now, immediately, what do you say? How many did Detroit have? Detroit attempted 29. That's a huge discrepancy, folks. And what were they? 26 of 29, I think, on the year. So when people ask you, is Washington going to score? Ask them this. Do you think they're going to score touchdowns or do you mean score in general? Because teams can score, but it's whether or not you score touchdowns. Washington, they go for it on fourth down. We saw it last week against Tampa, 3 for 5 on the year, 20 of 23. It's not an exorbitant amount, but they do go for it on fourth down, and they do it because they are successful. But I would ask you this, in all honesty, if that team is kicking field goals, does it really matter to you that much? Because it doesn't to me. Why would we care? Look at Detroit's offense. What do they do? We get it's the points per game and all this other stuff. Instead of just looking at points per game, let's look at touchdowns. What this team has done in scoring touchdowns. They have 39 touchdowns through the air. 39. Who's got more? Cincinnati, but they don't run the football very well, right? Joe Burrow was unbelievable, 43 touchdowns. Joe Burrow was incredible. But the 39 touchdowns are fourth most in the National Football League. Cincinnati, Baltimore, and Tampa are the only teams who had more passing touchdowns than the Lions did.
I think that's a great point because people just want to talk about the Lions' run game all the time. It's they
here's the reason why. They've rushed 29 touchdowns, which is second most in the NFL. Buffalo is the only team to have more rushing touchdowns than Detroit, 31. Perhaps Josh Allen got those two against Detroit, and that did him in. Who knows? But they have a running quarterback who can run the football and rush for touchdowns, where Detroit doesn't necessarily have that. I'm not taking anything away from Buffalo. I'm just telling you, when you look at the balance, and Washington has rushed, they're top 5 in rushing touchdowns too. But when you look at the balance, Detroit, passing touchdowns 4, running touchdowns 2, nobody's as efficient as the Detroit Lions in punching it across the goal line. That is important. The thing I believe, and this is, again, not trailblazing here, the thing that holds Detroit back, the thing that would hold Detroit back against Washington is turnovers. If they eliminate the turnovers, there is no doubt in my mind. I haven't even gone to a negative spot with this game yet in my mind. That's honest. I'm being very truthful here. I don't see any way Detroit loses this football game.
I don't either.
If it's Philadelphia, if they're playing Philadelphia in the NFC Championship game, you bet there's some slight concern there. And it's justified because it's the best scoring defense in the National Football League. That's a team that can win. We talk about how Detroit wins different ways. Again, number 4 in passing touchdowns, number 2 in rushing touchdowns, 26 of 29 field goal attempts. All those things add up to points, different ways to score, right? I would remind you, Washington, 3 times this year, I said this yesterday, 3 times this year, they had games of no turnovers in that game and no punts for Washington. That's really impressive. I think Detroit did that once, maybe once. That's a really hard thing to do, but whatever. Either way, I'm just telling you, when Detroit plays, and they've done it all season long, which is pretty obvious by the numbers, when they play their game, that's what they're going to do. They're going to score. Detroit's scoring 30 points in this game. The question is whether Jaden Daniels, and if you feel like that's how Washington wins, and most people feel that way, I think the way they win is they have to create turnovers, because I think Detroit is going to be able to find a way to limit Jaden Daniels. I'm not saying they're going to stop him. Nobody's stopping the dude. He's a great player. He really is. Already this season, he has proven he's had a great season. For a rookie to do what he's done, no rookie's ever done this.
Yeah, he's a star. He's a star already. Yep.
He's a star already. I think that's fair to say. That is not jumping the gun. It doesn't mean that next year he's going to have the same thing. Remember what happened to C.J. Stroud?
Yeah.
Last year, C.J. Stroud, everybody's like, oh, my God, this guy is the second coming of John Elway. This guy's unbelievable. Well, he came back down to earth a little bit this year, didn't he? Teams adjust. You have to adjust. I'm very confident that Jaden Daniels will be able to do that. However, I think Detroit has proven their ability to adjust, their ability to deal with very mobile quarterbacks. And I know they had different personnel, but the concept, we're talking about concepts. I think the week off, when people talk about rest versus rust, I think the week off will be really big for the Lions. I really do. I think it's going to be really important. Anyway, wanted to get your thoughts on that on the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. Or you can text the program, Sports Radio, to 21,000. Why do you think Washington wins? Why do you think Detroit loses? And it would be great to hear or read somebody saying something other than the obvious. Let's go a little bit deeper into something like that. Again, the Meyer hotline, 866-838-4843. Speaking of the Bills, I loved, I don't know if you saw what Lamar Jackson said the other day. It was awesome. He and Josh Allen are the 1-2 punch for MVP voting. You can make a strong case for either one. And quite honestly, as good as Jackson was a year ago, he's been better this year. He's already won it twice. He could win it a third time. And if he did, I don't think people would have a problem with it. Look, people in Philly believe Saquon Barkley, and I get it. Early on this season, people in Detroit felt Jared Goff. People in Buffalo truly feel that Josh Allen deserves it, and people in Baltimore recognize that Lamar Jackson is coming off an MVP season, and he's better this year than he has been any other time. I think Joe Burrow belongs in the conversation, and nobody's talking about him. Hell, I know Patrick Mahomes' numbers are way down. How the hell do you think they got 15 wins? I know you're tired of Patrick Mahomes. I get it. I am so sick and tired. One of the best things about last weekend is you didn't have to watch the Kansas City Chiefs. But I really respect Andy Reid. I really respect Patrick Mahomes. I can't stand Travis Kelce, but I respect the hell out of his ability and his Hall of Fame career. I hope we can all agree on that.
Yeah, we say the same thing about Andy Reid for Coach of the Year. It's
absolutely.
Like it just gets it goes over people's heads because we're just so used to it. We're numb to it.
But Trent, why? I know how you feel about Kansas City, especially. My son is right there with you, by the way. Just cannot stand him. But answer me this: how did they get to 15 wins?
The two biggest reasons are their quarterback and their coach, for sure. Their offense, you know.
So if you and I both agree, if we both agree that Andy Reid is deserved to be in the conversation for Coach of the Year, but he's not. I mean, it's Kevin O'Connell, it's Dan Campbell, it's probably Sean Payton, maybe Jim Harbaugh. That's just a guess on my part. I haven't heard many people bring up Andy Reid except for this show. Honest to God. I mean, we're not patting ourselves on the back. I'm the only one who said, I believe that I can tell that I believe Andy Reid belongs in the conversation. But if you think it's Andy Reid, and on an aside here, Baker Mayfield any other year would probably be in the conversation for MVP. Don't you think? But here's the thing that people forget. Patrick Mahomes, I know he's only got 26 touchdowns. It's not the Joe Burrow 43. But Pat Mahomes is still 7th in yardage, which maybe you feel like some of that could be garbage yardage. I don't feel that's necessarily true. He's still top 10 in completion percentage. And he still helped lead his team to 15 wins. Don't take it out of context. I'm not suggesting he belongs in the same conversation as Josh Allen and Lamar Jackson and Saquon Barkley. Those three, I think Joe Burrow belongs in there too. Those four have separated themselves. But when people say, I can't vote for Joe Burrow because Cincinnati didn't make the playoffs. And then I say, what about Pat Mahomes? And they say, well, he didn't have as many touchdowns. Whoa, hold on a second. You said one guy doesn't deserve it because their team's not good enough. This guy does it with a patchwork. Besides the all-pro center. He's doing it with patchwork on the offensive side of things. And they got 15 wins. But you're not going there? Can you really have it both ways? Let's go to the phone lines. The Meyer hotline is open for you, 866-838-4843. Who's up next on a Thursday?
Before we hit a quick break here, Freddie wants to give us a key to the Lions-Commanders game that not many people are talking about.
What is it, Freddie? How are you?
Yeah, I know you're up against it. It's going to be real quick. It has nothing to do with the player for me. It has to do with coaching. Dan Campbell has proven he's taking the team to an NFC Championship game. Dan Quinn's taking the team to a Super Bowl. So he's got the advantage there. So this is what I'm looking for, because I was really disappointed in the NFC Championship game with the Lions. I want to see him outdo Dan Quinn, Super Bowl coach. That's what I'm looking forward to. So that's it.
Well, wait a minute. So you think because Dan Quinn got a team to a Super Bowl and Dan Campbell hasn't, that he's automatically got the advantage? Is that what you're saying?
On paper, he does. On paper, he does. I'm not saying
what happened.
He'll win it.
Okay. Just out of curiosity, what happened with Matt LaFleur and Mike McCarthy last year?
Matt LaFleur and Mike McCarthy. What game was that?
That was Green Bay at Dallas when Green Bay went in there and opened up a can on him. Mike McCarthy won a Super Bowl. Didn't just get a team there. Matt LaFleur's never been. So I'm wondering, at least as a head coach.
Yeah, you're right. You asked the question. Let's get a different take other than Jaden Daniels. Yeah. The quarterback for what? Yeah, Jaden Daniels. You asked for a different opinion. My opinion is one coach took a team to a Super Bowl. The other one missed. That's what I'm looking for. I want to see Dan Campbell outdo Dan Quinn.
Gotcha.
So that's all.
Okay.
On
Yeah,
paper,
no, that's good. That's good.
Thanks,
I got it. I appreciate it. Thanks. Yeah, I didn't quite honestly. I didn't look at it like that. I think Dan Campbell holds his own. But that's a really good point. Give me the talent. I mean, you got to have coaching. I know it's really important, especially in football. So Freddie's right in that regard. In football, it's vital. I would say football and baseball. I mean, those coaches, one's a manager, are as instrumental in their team's game day success as anybody else. I never believed in the bullcrap of, well, managers in baseball maybe account for 5 wins or so in the year. I remember talking with national people about that, saying, based on what? Like, it's just a number. I'm going to pull it out of the air. It's just not based on what? What are you talking about? Do you not believe that they're responsible for pitching changes and pitching matchups and pinch hitting and where you're playing certain guys and what you're having certain guys throw? I think it's vital.
Right, and a bad manager can lose you the game.
Oh, my God.
Easily, right?
Yeah. How you doing, Brad Osmus? Okay, final hour. Here's what we got coming your way. And I'm really excited. Dan Miller, Lions play-by-play voice, joins us 8:35. At 8:18, we're going to talk with Heather Toko. She is the owner of Home Bakery in Rochester, Michigan, that made the Amon-Ra St. Brown life-size cake. The inspiration, what it took to make it, just kind of a fun aside, but still sticking with a football theme in the final hour of X's and Bros.
Saturday night, April 26th.
Carry on my way.
some facts and come back and see me. Get some facts and come back and see me. Don't throw out salaries or other things. Get some facts and come back and see me.
You can't handle the truth. I told our players, you need to be more like a dog. We don't need a bunch of cats in here. Yeah, looking in the mirror. Do I look good? I got my extra bands on. I got my other shoes on. Be a dog. We don't need no meows. We don't need no cats. We need more dogs.
Are you not entertained? Are you not entertained?
We weren't good. There's no sense asking me things about the game. I'm telling you, we laid an egg, so I'm not going to break it down for you. We sucked. We sucked. We laid an egg. That's all I have to say, guys. I'm sorry. I'm not going to break it down for you. Nothing went well for us. It's on us. We have to figure it out, and we will.
It's showtime. Final hour of the program here in this hour on X's and Bros. And this hour is probably brought to you by Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. Heather Toko, the owner of Home Bakery in Rochester, Michigan, that made the Amon-Ra St. Brown life-size cake, will join us at 8:18, 8:35. Dan Miller, Lions play-by-play voice, ready to have a good conversation with him about the Lions and the Commanders that take place Saturday night, and ready to have a good conversation with him about some of the other games that we anticipate this weekend to being really good. I've forgotten, and our poll question is up on our Twitter handle as well, at XB Mornings. Check it out. Do you think the Big Ten basketball is underrated? Yes or no? Michigan State, another good win last night, beating Penn State. Michigan is in Minnesota tonight. Pistons also home to the Pacers. So we ask you, do you think the Big Ten basketball conference is underrated? You can vote yes or no at XB Mornings. I retweeted at Shepard as well. I realize that, you know, we get caught in these conversations and we start to go in different directions. Sometimes I feel like my wife telling a story where it's supposed to be the focus, and suddenly we're going over here, and then we got to steer it back to the middle, and then we go way over here and steer it back to the middle. Let's stay in the lane, right?
Keep the blinders on.
Oh, I forgot to tell you, and I brought up Lamar Jackson. I love what he said, he and Josh Allen, about Josh Allen, because we got into the MVP discussion real quick, and then it goes off into another tangent. Here's what Jackson said about the relationship with Josh Allen. He said, look, when we're older, we're probably going to laugh about, playing one another. But right now, it's dead serious. He said, I'm not laughing with you. I don't really chill with people in the offseason, especially not other QBs. Now, I would assume what he means by that is he doesn't chill with other players. It's more his guys who he grew up with and his close friends and his family and so on and so forth. I could be wrong there. He said, don't get me wrong. There's no problem, alluding to him and Allen, but we're competing against each other. I'm trying to beat you. I'm not trying to be your friend. I love that. Allen said, in the history of football, I've never really played against another quarterback. I've played against their defenses. So I'm just taking it one day at a time, trying to have a good week of practice, controlling what I can. It's about the attitude and the effort. I love both those answers, but I love Jackson's more because it shows you, as much as we may link the two together because of what appears to be NB finalist types of seasons, what Jackson is basically telling you is, I'm worried about myself, and I don't have time to have fun relationships with guys who I'm competing against, trying to win a conference championship, trying to get to a Super Bowl, and maybe win an MVP. I firmly believe that most of these guys, unless they feel like their team doesn't have a legitimate shot at winning the Super Bowl, and I don't feel that way about either one of these guys, they don't care about the MVP as much. They want to win the Super Bowl. That's where they want to get to. That's what separates them from a lot of others. Now, if your team doesn't have much, if I'm Joe Burrow, sure, that's the consolation prize. My team's doesn't have a chance of winning the Super Bowl. These two guys, ask us in the media, asking them about the MVP doesn't serve a purpose because they don't give a crap right now. At least externally, they don't. Maybe deep down inside, maybe with the conversations with their wives or their families, they're going, yeah, it'd be awesome. Why? Well, I got an opportunity to make a little extra money. I got an opportunity to do something nobody else has done and all this other stuff. But overall, I love that Lamar Jackson is basically taking an arms approach. You're over there, I'm over here. And Josh Allen has to remind us again, as we constantly compare quarterbacks, they're not playing against one another, for crying out loud. They're playing against the opposing team's defense. That's first and foremost. All right, let's get to the results of our poll question from yesterday. Here's what we asked you. Who wins this weekend in the AFC? So what's the AFC championship game going to look like? Is it going to be Kansas City and Buffalo, Kansas City and Baltimore, Houston and Buffalo, or Houston and Baltimore? What were the final results from the poll question yesterday?
Not shockingly, no one really believes in the Texans portion of this. Those two together only got 13% of the vote. 53% of the vote say Chiefs and Bills, and 34% of the vote say Chiefs and Ravens. So it's, in a lot of people's minds, it's the Chiefs and whichever one of these MVP candidates comes out on top.
So the guess here is that they don't feel like the rust of Kansas City is a factor.
Evidently not.
Okay. All right. The Daily Wager, and we have the Daily Wager for you every day in the 8 o'clock hour. It's not always at the same time because sometimes things come up. But the Daily Wager is brought to you by our friends at Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. Check out their sportsbook, Ascend. Great menu, really good food. It's not just bar food, really good food with good company to watch. For example, Michigan State last night beat Penn State and now go 9-0 at home and extend the winning streak to 10 games. And Tom Izzo get one step closer to passing Bobby Knight for most wins in Big Ten basketball coaching history. Think about this. He's been at the helm for 30 years. They brought this up last night during the broadcast. It's a really good point. My disappointment is that if it continues at this rate, where he does it is at UCLA, which they said during the broadcast, obviously it's great. It's where John Wooden was, Pauley Pavilion, where John Wooden won all his championships. And I've told this story before. First time I ever went to UCLA, I actually toured parts of the campus. Couldn't make it all the way around the campus, but parts of the campus with John Wooden. It was an awesome experience for me. Had a chance to visit with the man. He's as genuine a person as you could have ever met. The people around him are very gracious. It's one of the highlights of my broadcasting career, and I mean that. But I would like to see Tom Izzo break it at home. Selfish, I know, but I think Michigan State fans deserve something like that. Doesn't mean I'm rooting against them moving forward. What it means is I wouldn't be disappointed if it extended maybe another game or two that allowed him to do this in East Lansing where he gets the proper send-off. I love anytime somebody breaks some record, although I don't know how keen I am with Ovechkin breaking Gretzky's record, but it seems like it's going to happen. But what happens is they'll come back. Izzo does that, let's just say, at UCLA. He comes back, and they have this big celebration in East Lansing, which is great. But it's not as the way the spontaneity would take place if it actually happened in the building. That's what I'd be rooting for. But as long as he gets there, and he's going to get there, it really doesn't matter. So that's what you could have done last night at Ascend. Watch Michigan State play Penn State. Tonight, good time to go there. Go gamble a little bit. Maybe get a burger at Johnny Rockets to hold you over for a little bit. Then go to Ascend, look at their menu, have a cold one, grab something to eat, watch the Pistons play the Pacers, and watch Michigan take on Minnesota. Not a bad way to spend the evening. So that's what you do at Ascend right there at Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort. What was the Daily Wager yesterday? It involved Michigan State. I don't think you won. And what do you have for us tonight?
Yeah, it was another loser. We're 0-3 this week, Shep. I got to get off the schneid. I had Michigan State.
Saying something like,
"You're the guy
very good at this, are you?
You're the guy with the bad gambling advice." Yes, sir, I am. I'm sorry. At least this week, I had Michigan State minus 11.5. They didn't cover that spread, but they got.
I was with you on that, man. I was with you on it. And you know they led by double digits.
I was going to say for parts of the game it looked like they could get there, but when it was all said and done, they win by 5. They'll take the win.
Daily Wager tonight?
Tonight, I've got Tobias Harris over 22.5 points, rebounds, assists. You add them all up. It's one of my favorite prop bets to do. Pistons hosting the Pacers. They're 2.5-point favorites, but I've got Tobias over 22.5 points, rebounds, assists.
And Pistons on a roll. Indiana was on a roll. They had won 6 in a row until they lost to Cleveland Tuesday night. When we come back, we visit with Heather Toko. She's the owner of Home Bakery in Rochester, Michigan. It's the bakery that went all over the place on social media, set it ablaze because it had the life-size cake of Amon-Ra St. Brown standing on his head. We'll ask her about that inspiration, what it took to make it, and more. Plus, Dan Miller at 8:35 on X's and Bros.
The Meyer 7 for 7.
Bakery did I don't even know if they thought what they were going to do was going to be this, cool, this special, but I saw it and people loved it. I loved it. So I had to come out here and check it out to see it up close and in person.
It is so cool on how things can bring communities together and how sports can do just that. Heather Toko took that to heart. She's the owner of Home Bakery in Rochester, Michigan. She is the one who helped design and help make the Amon-Ra St. Brown life-size cake that you could see in her front window. He saw it. He took a picture of it. It was social media buzz at the highest. And she joins us here on X's and Bros throughout the state of Michigan. Heather, good morning to you and a happy new year to you and everybody at Home Bakery there in Rochester. How are you today?
I'm doing well, a little tired, some long days, but overall pretty darn good.
Yeah, I bet you guys are always working and always working hard. I really respect what you do. Where did you gain the inspiration for this cake?
It was kind of collaborative with my team. We just decided that we wanted to show our love for the Lions and we wanted to show off our skill set. And there's about 11 of us that have our hands on it. And we started talking about the design, and St. Brown and that headstand was kind of a no-brainer for us. It's such an iconic image, and the rest was kind of history.
You are located at 300 South Main Street in Rochester, Michigan, but it's not just the hands or the headstand that Amon-Ra St. Brown had in the end zone. There are other things that you do associated with the Lions that we will get to, but let me just focus on this life-size cake first and foremost. Any idea that off the top of your head, or maybe you got it written down, maybe you just know it but baking is so precise. You have to have the exact right amount. What went into making of the cake? How much ingredients went into making of it?
I get asked that question a lot, and I'm upset with myself that I didn't calculate it. Generally, when we do our elaborate window displays, we do one every Christmas. I tally everything. Mm-hmm. But unfortunately, this time we were doing such little pieces throughout our busiest season of the year, the Christmas time, that you'd have a half an hour there, 20 minutes over here, 3 hours here. One day we work until 1 a.m. At minimum, we have 200 hours into the entire display. We made the marquee letters and the big lion as well. It took 3 of us to move it, and it was heavy. Yeah. I couldn't tell you how much it weighs. I wish I would have weighed it. But yeah, I got to imagine it's got to have at least 60 pounds of fondant on it. From there, I'd be at a loss to give you anything that was real numbers.
That's incredible. Heather Toko, the owner of Home Bakery in Rochester, Michigan, on Main Street, and sculpting the Amon-Ra St. Brown actual life-size cake of him standing on his head in the end zone in a touchdown celebration, joining us here on X's and Bros throughout the state of Michigan and on X and on YouTube and on Facebook as well. Heather, when you make something like this, obviously you have to be creative, and you said your team has done this times before. Is this as challenging a project as you and your team has ever had? And can you give us an idea of some of the other projects of this magnitude that you and your team have put together?
So this was pretty challenging because normally the characters that we do, for instance, this holiday display that we had in the window was Deadpool and Wolverine with Dogpool in it too. Those characters were probably about 5'8" in size, so scaled down some. We had a whole fireplace display, and Deadpool's holding a mistletoe over Wolverine. Those are easier because I have 2 points of contact to the ground. We're trying to have somebody standing on their head and using one central point of contact was probably one of the most challenging things we've done in a while.
Yeah, I can imagine. When you design something like this, you have to be more than just a baker, right? I mean, you almost have to be a construction worker in trying to handle something like this. What was the biggest challenge with this in terms of not creativity, but the ability just to pull it off?
We call ourselves cake engineers because we really have to engineer this not to collapse. There's a series of thread rods and plates throughout the internal structure of it. I think we've done it enough times that for the most part, we've got it down pat. I mean, we've actually made a shoulder mount of a 10-point buck that hung on a wall. You know,
Really? That's cool.
we have the skill set for that. So, but someone standing on their head was incredibly difficult.
What is it meant to Home Bakery in Rochester? What is it? How much has it increased foot traffic or phone calls to get this type of attention?
When we did it, we decided to do it, and we put the window up. We knew it would be big. We knew we would get, a couple of news stations maybe stopping by. We had no idea what was going to happen, and it has been absolutely amazing. The community, people just coming in to say thank you and buying a baked good and wanting to support us because of this a great piece of art that we've done. That, I mean, the people don't stop coming and taking photos and stopping in the shop. And the most beautiful thing is they're not only stopping in my shop, they're going to the restaurants, they're stopping at some of the boutiques. It's been so great for our community. It's humbling too that they're thanking me and us for us just doing what we do and what we love. It's a thing.
Well, Main Street in Rochester is already beautiful. The obvious question later becomes, how long does it stay in the window display? And do you ever cut it up and eventually eat it?
No, God, no. You would not want to eat the steak. We started on it in September, and we purposely let it get dehydrated because if we don't, it will sink and collapse in the window. So through the process, it's drying out and the Rice Krispie treats and stuff like that. So no, we won't eat it.
All right. Well, then what do you do with it when you're done? I mean, this is not the first project you've had like that. You've already mentioned the Wolverine, the movie that's associated with Wolverine recently at Christmas time. What do you do with the sculptures when you're done with them?
Sometimes I try to save them and we take it up to our consultation space upstairs if it manages. A lot of times when we attempt to move it, they crack apart, almost disintegrate, right? So if I can save it, then I will, but it's unlikely that I'll be able to save it.
How much has this inspired you to maybe do more sports cakes of this magnitude?
It certainly has crossed my mind that maybe I'm going to have 2 big window displays a year.
I bet. More and more people. Now, I'd mentioned it's not the only thing as an ode to the Lions, big Lions fans, but you have buttercream sugar cookie for the Lions. You have football cookies. You have cupcakes. What else have you and your team put together to kind of get people remain interested in supporting of the best football team in the National Football Conference?
Well, one of my cakes I really like that we have inside is Gibbs jersey with a little crown on the side of it from that Vikings game. We really like that. We have Rory, a little him. So we can customize any Lions theme cake that you want. But some of our other baked goods we've got our cronut that we put Lions color sprinkles on. And then we're most known for our cake, but our cronut is our second biggest seller. It's the love child between a croissant and a donut, and it's filled with a vanilla bean pastry cream. It's delicious.
Sounds like it. And your king cake that is in support of Mardi Gras, that where we hope the Lions will be playing in the Super Bowl in New Orleans, is pretty appropriate too. You can find everything you want from the Home Bakery on their website, thehomebakery.com. You got to check it out. I hope that Amon Ross St. Brown and other of these fantastic sculptures that you put together, you're able to showcase to more than just people on foot as well. Heather Tocco, thanks very much. Congratulations on the success. Congratulations on setting social media ablaze, but for the right reason. Appreciate it. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.
All right, you bet. Heather Tocco is the owner of Home Bakery and the Amon Ross St. Brown life-size cake, display in her window. Kind of reminds you of Cake Boss. Not that I watch it much, but my daughter used to love that show, where the guy in New York would make all kinds of crazy stuff, but you could actually eat those cakes. When we come back, we will eat more Lions discussion on these airwaves with Lions play-by-play voice Dan Miller. He's next.
Saturday night, April 26th.
Carry on my wayward son.
Soaring Eagle Casino and Resort welcomes multi-platinum legends Kansas. Tickets start at $47 and are on sale now at the box office or online at etix.com. Don't miss Kansas live.
Another Fork in the Road tour.
At Soaring Eagle Saturday, April 26th. More at SoaringEagleCasino.com.
X's and Bros is on the road. Hey, everybody, this is Matt Shepard. Friday morning, we're in Grand Rapids with Lions studio analyst Rob Rubik at Ferris Coffee to talk Lions and the NFL playoffs. Ferris Coffee, like the Lions, is family-owned for 100 years. It's the official coffee partner of the Detroit Lions. Wear your Lions gear, and you'll get 10% off your purchase on Friday. Stop by 839 Seward Avenue Friday morning from 6 until 9. Grab a cup of the best coffee made and talk a little Lions with Rob Rubik and me on X's and Bros.
What's up, Michigan? You're listening to Shep. Don't forget the huge show later today at 3 on the Michigan Sports Network. How would you like to be a part of the Van Andel Institute Marathon team, where you could run and raise funds for critical research into diseases like cancer and Parkinson's by running the Bank of America Chicago Marathon or the BMW Berlin Marathon? Learn more at vai.org/marathon.
Okay, back with you on our final segment here on X's and Bros, 35 after the hour, with you Monday through Friday, 6 until 9, wherever it is you may be listening. We appreciate it, whether it be in Cadillac or Grand Rapids or Kalamazoo or Holland or Petoskey or Charlevoix, Traverse City, Lansing, or live on X, on Facebook, and on YouTube. Dan Miller's a friend of mine. He does an outstanding Hall of Fame-like work calling Lions football. He's done it for a long time, and he has had a ton of fun, whether they were losing or winning, but especially now. And he joins us here on X's and Bros on this Thursday morning. I've been looking forward to this all week long. Dan, how are you, buddy?
Hey, Shep. Thanks for the kind words. Great to catch up with you, man. Thank you.
Yeah, for sure. How much fun are you having?
Oh, man. I mean, look, everything you do, it's winning is the best. There's nothing that beats winning. It's I always go back to something Bobby Ross said. Bobby Ross said winning cures everything, and he's right. And as I've said to people, there's nothing better for me. The best part of my job is seeing fans happy and seeing them be able to enjoy this, because for so long they've been unhappy and so long they've been angry, and that's been the best part of this ride.
How has this team gotten better, do you think?
This year or overall?
This year.
I think this year there's just experience that they got from last season, that you saw them be able to win games in so many different ways this year, whether they were playing well start to finish, whether they threw 5 interceptions against Houston, whether they had to come from behind. They're just battle tested, and you've got to be to win 15 games. And I think that we've seen that from them, that it is just a team that it doesn't matter how they need to win, whether it's offense, defense, special teams, they complement each other and they just figure it out. And that's what better teams do in my mind.
Dan, what's the one thing we as a media and fans miss that you are recognizing about this team that you appreciate most, do you think?
I mean, I just think it's the coaching. I mean, I think, Dan Campbell even made fun of himself the other day when he talked about, is our quarterback good enough? Is the head coach a meathead? Look, this is a really well-coached team. And more than that, this is a team with coaches that develop players. Shep, that depth chart is amazing. I mean, if you look at where they are and what they've done and how far they've come and compare it to years gone by, I mean, you can look at that thing and say they've got 2 of the best safeties in the game. When Hutch is around, they got one of the best defensive ends in the game. When Alim is there, one of the best defensive tackles in the game. They bring in Reeder. Penei Sewell's one of the best tackles in the game. Ragnow's one of the best centers in the game. Goff is playing like one of the best quarterbacks in the game. Jameer Gibbs is one of the best players in the league, period. Amon-Ra, same thing. I mean, some of those guys came from elsewhere, but they've been developed for the most part here into being great players. And that's what you have to do. If you're not drafting and developing, you're not going to win. And they've done that.
Right on. I look at Jack Campbell. Look at how much better he was this year, or has been this year, compared to last year. I think Alex Anzalone. Look, Dan, I'll be the first to admit I was wrong about him. I wasn't a huge fan when they made the pickup. He's been vital to this team's success. And players like Tim Patrick and even Jamison Williams, who buys into blocking downfield. That's not an easy thing to do, and yet this entire wide receiver group does it. The assistants get a lot of credit, and for good reason. But there's so much made of Ben Johnson because of the artistry and some of the trickery, but I think the consistency more than anything else. Can you tell me what has blown your mind about Aaron Glenn's ability to keep this team winning with patchwork defense? And that's not a knock on players who are second and third stringers, because I give them a ton of credit too. But Aaron Glenn has had to devise ways to get to the quarterback when he doesn't have Aiden Hutchinson and certain other personnel.
Yeah, it's kind of amazing. You think back to that Dallas game when Aiden went down, and we all thought, man, I don't know where this thing goes from here without him, because he was kind of the one guy that generated pass rushing. And we thought early in the year we saw some flashes from Davenport, but he was gone before you knew it. And then, they just kept finding a way to get it done. And I think there's kind of an interesting study there with Aaron Glenn in that, since he's been here, they've given up a lot of yards. I mean, in particular in the passing game, they've given up a lot of yards, but recently when they've started to win, haven't given up a lot of points.
Right.
And I think that's, Dan Campbell always says that. That's the object, is to not give up points to the other team. And Aaron Glenn does have a way of clamping down on teams when he's got the opportunity to. They're the number one third down defense in the league. They find a way to get off the field. They kind of fell off the takeaway train there in the middle of the season, but they've come back a little bit now. And Kirby had the big couple of picks towards the end of the year. But I just think when you're talking about a guy that can put a defense together, and 1 week we saw it with 4 players who hadn't even been here for 6 days, it's pretty amazing. And I just think he's able to work with whatever is available to him in that week and find a way to make it work. Now, that said, the equalizer for this team is the offense, because they can still outscore anybody if the defense has a tough day. But I don't think you can say enough about what Aaron Glenn has done. And the way I've seen him develop as a leader and a guy, even in front of the media every week, and the composure that he has, and just the way he expresses himself, man, he's ready. I'd be shocked if he's here next year.
He is the outstanding play-by-play voice for the Detroit Lions, getting ready for the Lions and the Commanders. Dan Miller joining us here on X's and Bros. People talk about Jaden Daniels, and I love him, and I think you do too. As a fan of football, you love what this guy brings to the table. But many people have told me, I'm concerned about the mobile quarterback. And I said, what about Kyler Murray? What about Baker Mayfield? What about Geno Smith? What about Caleb Williams? Detroit has been able to handle them. They always go back to Josh Allen. What's the biggest concern Lions fans and the Lions in general do you think have going into the game Saturday night?
Yeah, I mean, look, it is his ability to do things with his feet, whether it's buying time to throw, which he does on the run very well, or just design quarterback rollouts, runs, RPOs, whatever it is, that kid can do it. And I just think you got to find a way to corral him. You mentioned Kyler Murray. Look, early in that game against Arizona, first drive, he had 2 big runs. And really after that, he didn't do anything in the running game.
Yeah.
And I think you just got to find some way not to let this guy break your heart. And you also have to remember, a lot of times with these guys, it's going to be a 4-down experience. You got to win on 1st and 2nd down. Try to get him in something 3rd and 7, 3rd and 8, something along those lines, where he's got to make a play. And then you got to contain him and try to make him do it with his arm. Not that he can't, but I think your chances of stopping him are better there than if he finds an opening and you drop in man and he sees everything's gone. So, look, it's about doing your job on the play, not feeling like you have to freelance to go get this guy, because that's when I think he can really hurt you. And I just think that you have to be assignment sound against players like this. He's going to make plays. And when I say break your heart, I mean that 3rd and 11, when you think you got him off the field and he finds a way to get it. It's going to happen. But you just got to come back and play the next play with this guy and try to get it right. And be ready for a long night of chasing this really talented young player around.
Some of my favorite moments in listening to your broadcast is really the pregame, where you and Lomas Brown and TJ Lang talk about either keys to victory or just some things that you've observed that aren't necessarily sponsored during a broadcast, right? And special teams is oftentimes brought up, and for good reason. You mentioned the points or the yards allowed by the Lions defense, but the points is still very respectful. The Commanders have attempted 42 field goals, Dan. Only 3 teams have attempted more in the National Football League, while Detroit ranks 2nd in rushing touchdowns to Buffalo and 4th in passing touchdowns. I think therein lies the difference. If Washington's settling for field goals, that's fine. They're going to have to score 30 to beat Detroit. What do you think, offensively wise and special teams wise, will be most important in this game?
Shep, it's funny. I've talked to a lot of people about this game this week, and Daniels comes up, and I keep saying this. To me, I'm not watching that defense as much as I'm watching the Lions offense, because we've seen this year when they get on those runs where they score on 4 consecutive possessions or 4 out of 5, and the other team has 1 or 2 empty possessions, and all of a sudden they're down 2 or 3 scores. We saw it against Seattle. We saw it against Dallas. We saw it in some of their bigger games. If they have that kind of game, really it's not asking any more than them playing to their capabilities that they've shown us they have all year long. I think it becomes a very difficult day for Washington. But I do think that to me is the way to kind of map out a victory. Just have that offense do what they've done. Washington's defense is vulnerable. Washington's defense does have a tough time against the run. The Lions have balance. The Lions are going to have Montgomery back. The Lions are going to have that 1-2 punch. I just think they have to have not even a great day, Shep, just their day on offense. Do what they can do. And if they have 4 or 5 touchdown drives, which is not at all unusual for the number 1 scoring team in the league, I think, again, it becomes very difficult, and you put a ton of pressure on that Washington offense to keep up.
It's going to be electric. When you look at this situation, and Detroit had the week off, look, this is not college football, all right, where all the first-round teams that had buys stunk up the joint. Are you a rust versus rest guy, or do you throw that kind of stuff right out the window when it comes to matchups?
You know, I believe these guys understand what a bye week is because they have them every year. I don't see that as a problem. I think they understand it. I think that in particular, when you have a team whose bye was as early as the Lions was this year, they haven't had a break in quite some time. And on top of that, you know, you get that compacted schedule around Thanksgiving where they had the 2 Thursday games. And that really, I think, took a toll on them physically. I think just having a little bit of time to rest was way more significant than any concern about rust. And I think these guys will come out refreshed and ready to go. And, you know, if there's any issues, I don't think it'll be because they didn't play. I just think this is the time of year when they could really use that. And let's face it, you know, coming with that is the ability to play at Ford Field, which has become one of the biggest weapons in the NFL right now. And I think they'll take that over anything, just that ability to be there. And that's what they started out the season to do. They had the experience of going to San Francisco. They didn't want to do that again. If that game comes down, they want to have it at Ford Field. And now they've got the opportunity, if they can win this one, to have that game here in front of their fans and not have to deal with, you know, that hostile environment in San Francisco where, frankly, they were their own worst enemy. I don't think it was about the crowd. Yeah. But I'll take it's a long way, Shep, of saying I'll take the week of rest. I think if Dan Campbell has shown anything, it is that he gets his guys ready to play every single week.
I agree 100% with that. And it is ironic that their 2 losses have come at home, but that doesn't mean you don't want the home field advantage. I know you're more than just the voice of the Lions. You love football. So I want your opinion on this. I think Dan Campbell belongs in the conversation. I'm not saying this with my heart, Dan. I'm saying this with my head. I think Dan Campbell belongs in the conversation for Coach of the Year. Kevin O'Connell's in there, maybe Jim Harbaugh, of course. I would strongly argue that Andy Reid belongs in the conversation considering what they've had to go through. Okay. And then, of course, Sean Payton. Where do you think Dan Campbell ranks in the national media eye when it comes to something like that accolade? I know it's not a big deal to him. He wants the Super Bowl, and rightfully so, but I'm just wondering.
Well, I would add in the same conversation, Shep, that Jared Goff isn't in the MVP conversation more than he is, I think goes to the same thing. I really do. Look, I know Lamar had an amazing season. The numbers he put up were crazy, and Josh Allen, all credit to him too. But I mean, look what Jared has done. And to your Campbell question, absolutely. I mean, when you look at what they've lost on defense, the number of players that they had to deal with and not have, and not just players, you're talking your 2 best defensive linemen, you're talking your best cornerback, you're talking you were missing Alex Anzalone for a significant period of time, and any other number of contributors that were expected to play big snaps. Right. So, yeah, absolutely. I just feel like there becomes a narrative. Everybody kind of adheres to it. There's only a couple of guys that are mentioned, and then that becomes the entire conversation. And then because Andy Reid and Dan Campbell won last year, nobody takes a closer look at what they had to deal with just to get back to where they were this year and the losses that they endured along the way. So, look, I agree with you 100%. But after a while with some of these awards, you just kind of throw up your hands and say, you know what, you can't turn this freighter around in a tiny little port because everybody is moving in one direction and some people get lost. And I've felt the same thing about Goff for a long time. And it's like he's always 4th or 5th on everybody's list.
Yeah, that's because they look at one game and one game only, and that's the Houston game, and it's really unfortunate. I also say that, Dan Campbell using a rookie kicker, a guy who came from, the USFL or the UFL or XFL or whatever the hell it is called now these days. He comes from there, and you put him in the right spots to be successful. Just a couple more. Philly or the Rams? What a story LA has been in their turnaround. But Philly, with the best scoring defense out there, can win in a few different ways too. Who do you like in that matchup?
I like Philadelphia. I like them being at home. I think it's a little bit tougher for Stafford to do what he does in those conditions. I think that the Rams story is great. I think Stafford's part of the Rams story is great because he's been terrific.
Yeah.
And the young players that they have on that Rams defense has really elevated them from where they were last year. Last year, when the Lions played them, you felt there were a lot of things you could exploit on that defense. I think there's less now. And I think, getting Fisk was a big part of that. And they've seen some of their other young guys that played last year really grow up as well. But I still like Philly. I just think back to what we were saying earlier, they're battle tested. I think they're ready for this challenge. And I just think that's a tough environment for the Rams to go into. And I just, Philadelphia, even on a neutral field, might be my pick right now in that game.
I would agree with that. All right, AFC Championship, who do you think will be clashing in 2 weeks?
I don't think any way Kansas City loses in that game. I mean, look, I think Houston's had a decent season. I just don't think they're on Kansas City's level unless Kansas City has a miserable game in which they hurt themselves. And then I just, the other game is the one that I'm outside of ours. I'm really looking forward to watching. I can't wait to sit down and watch that. I like the Bills. I just feel like it might be their time. I think Josh is playing just off the charts. A lot of the things that he used to have issues with, he seems to have cleaned up. And I just feel like this might be their time to make that move with him and get a chance to win a Super Bowl. This is obviously a massive hurdle for them, and they're probably going to have one next week too. But as I looked at that game, I just feel like I like the way Buffalo's playing right now, and I absolutely love the way he's playing.
Yeah, I honestly believe this, and I said this months ago. I think it's going to be Detroit and Buffalo in the Super Bowl. I can't wait to hear you say the Lions are headed to the Super Bowl. Keep up the great work. Thanks for the time today, man. I know a lot of people are tugging at you, so we really appreciate the insight.
Anytime, Shep. I appreciate you, man. Great to catch up.
All right, thanks, buddy. Dan Miller, the voice of the Detroit Lions. Really good stuff, not just on the Lions, but on some of the other games and his thoughts. And I don't think it's unique. I think we think it's Kansas City and Buffalo. Most people said that on our poll question. Detroit and Philly. He's got chalk, but at some point, that's not the layup. It's okay to say it because I think, and he thinks obviously, those are the four best teams in the National Football League. And I think that's what we're going to see. We're going to talk about this all day tomorrow morning with Rob Rubik. He's going to join us from Ferris Coffee in Grand Rapids. We invite you out there. Wear your Lions gear. You get 10% off. That is live from Ferris Coffee tomorrow morning on X's and BrO's throughout the great state of Michigan. Have a wonderful Thursday, everybody, and we will talk to you tomorrow morning starting at 6 from Ferris Coffee in Grand Rapids on X's and BrO's.
It's time to go on the court with Matt Shepard.
It's a new day to celebrate.